The body was frozen. The truth was not. January 14th, 2017, a frigid Saturday morning in the small Midwestern town of Millhaven, population 12,000, a police officer steps into an abandoned slaughterhouse on the outskirts of town. The structure, condemned for years, sits like a forgotten relic of a different era. Inside, it is silent, empty, except for the meat locker in the basement. When the officer pulls the heavy steel door open, the bitter smell of decay mixes with frozen air. He shines his flashlight inside. What he sees will haunt Millhaven forever: a woman, frozen stiff. Her arms folded against her chest, her face pressed into the corner of the icy room. Her hair is matted, her lips blue. The officer stumbles back, whispering into his radio, "We've got a body, Jesus Christ. We've got a body." She wasn't just a body. She was a daughter, a sister, a beloved teacher, and now she was gone. Her name was Claire Matthews. She was 28 years old, a second-grade teacher at Millhaven Elementary. Her friends called her Sunshine. Her students adored her. She was the kind of teacher who dressed up for every holiday, who wrote encouraging notes on report cards, who stayed after school to make sure no child left behind in her class felt forgotten. Claire grew up in Millhaven. She knew almost everyone, and almost everyone knew her. Born to Richard and Susan Matthews, she was the youngest of 3 children, the only daughter. Her brothers, Adam and Luke, teased her relentlessly growing up, but they were fiercely protective. From an early age, Claire was drawn to children. Babysitting jobs in high school, Sunday school teaching at her church. By the time she was in college, there was no question she would be a teacher. And not just any teacher, one who left her mark on everyone she met. Outside the classroom, Claire loved books, running, and, like most Midwesterners, football Sundays with her family. She had a soft spot for old movies, especially black and white classics. Her favorite, It's a Wonderful Life. Her friends joked that she was an old soul in a young body. But there was one thing Claire wanted more than anything: a family of her own. In 2013, she met Daniel Reed. Daniel was a local contractor, 6 years older than Claire. They met at a charity fundraiser in town. He was tall, quiet, reserved. Claire was outgoing, warm, instantly magnetic. Their friends often wondered how the two fit together. But in photos, Daniel's hand was always on her back. Claire's head leaned into his shoulder. In 2015, they married in a modest ceremony at Millhaven Baptist Church. Claire walked down the aisle in her mother's lace-trimmed gown. Daniel wiped tears from his eyes as she approached. For Claire's family, it felt like a happy ending to a storybook romance. But some of Claire's friends noticed cracks. Daniel was controlling. They said he didn't like when Claire went out without him. He got irritated when she stayed late at school events. He sometimes checked her phone. Claire brushed it off. He's just protective, she'd tell her best friend, Megan, and for a while, life looked picture perfect. A cozy home in Millhaven, Claire teaching, Daniel working construction jobs, plans for children soon. But beneath the surface, something darker simmered. Millhaven, Illinois. A town where everyone waved at each other on the street, where neighbors borrowed sugar from across the fence, where people didn't lock their doors until the opioid epidemic brought crime closer to home. In Millhaven, news traveled fast, gossip even faster. And when Claire Matthews disappeared, it spread like wildfire. The week before she vanished, Claire seemed normal, at least on the surface. On January 9th, she taught her second graders about Martin Luther King Jr. Day. She decorated the classroom with paper chains the kids made. On the 10th, she stayed late for a parent-teacher meeting. A colleague noticed Daniel waiting outside in his truck, idling, watching. On January 11th, Claire confided in Megan over coffee. She seemed restless. She admitted she and Daniel were arguing more. He wanted her to quit teaching when they had kids. She didn't want to. Megan told her, "Don't lose yourself, Claire." Claire smiled faintly and said, "I won't." On January 12th, Claire attended her weekly book club at the library. She laughed, drank wine, and left at 9:15 p.m. She told her friends she'd see them next week. Those were the last words most of them would ever hear her say. Friday, January 13th, 2017, a night so cold it bit through coats. The town was covered in snow, temperatures dropping to 9 degrees. Claire left work around 4 p.m., telling her students, "Bundle up. It's freezing out there." She drove her silver Toyota Corolla home. A neighbor saw her pull into the driveway around 4:30. That evening, she texted Megan, "Thinking about going for a run before dinner." Megan replied, "You're crazy in this cold. Stay warm." Claire sent back a laughing emoji. That was at 5:02 p.m. By 9 p.m., Daniel Reed called 911. His voice shook as he told dispatchers, "My wife never came home. She went for a run, and she hasn't come back." Police arrived within minutes. Snow was falling again. There were faint footprints near the road by the Matthews Reed home, but they disappeared into the drifts. The town of Millhaven would never be the same. January 13th, 2017, the night Claire Matthews went missing. At first, it seemed routine, a husband worried about his wife, a runner who hadn't come home. Millhaven police received dozens of calls like this every year. Teenagers sneaking out, husbands and wives in arguments, people who turned up a few hours later safe and embarrassed. But this felt different. When officers arrived at the Matthews Reed home, they found Daniel Reed waiting outside in the driveway. His truck was running. He was pacing, coat open, face pale. An officer asked him, "When was the last time you saw your wife?" Daniel replied, "She said she was going for a run around 5. She usually does a 3-mile loop. She should have been home by 6. I waited, but she never came back." The officers split up. Some walked the street with flashlights. Others knocked on neighbors' doors. Snowflakes drifted in the air. The cold was biting. A neighbor, Mrs. Daly, recalled hearing the sound of running footsteps on the pavement around 5:30, but when asked if she was sure it was Claire, she shook her head. It was dark. I can't say for certain. By midnight, the search was official. Local police, firefighters, and dozens of volunteers combed the area. They searched the woods behind the Matthews Reed home. They checked gas stations and convenience stores. They called hospitals in case she'd slipped on ice and been brought in unconscious. At dawn, news spread through town. Flyers went up. Social media posts flooded Facebook. "Missing Claire Matthews. Last seen Friday evening. Please share." By Saturday, over 200 volunteers showed up at the high school gym to organize search parties. They carried flashlights, wore orange vests, and spread out in lines across frozen fields and back roads. A helicopter circled overhead. Police dogs sniffed for a trail. But snow had fallen heavily overnight. Tracks were erased, evidence buried. The town was blanketed in white silence. It was as if Claire had vanished into thin air. The first 48 hours are critical in any missing persons case. Every hour that passed made hope thinner. Detectives questioned Daniel Reed again on January 14th. His answers raised eyebrows. When asked what Claire had been wearing, he hesitated. Her black running pants, I think. Maybe a green jacket. I don't remember exactly." When asked if they'd argued that day, Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, we were fine," but detectives soon learned from Claire's friend Megan that the couple had been fighting for weeks. About children, about her teaching job, about money. And then there was the matter of Daniel's timeline. Phone records showed that between 6 o'clock and 8:30 p.m., the window when Claire should have been out running Daniel's phone had been inactive. No calls, no texts, nothing. Detectives pressed him. Where were you during those hours? Daniel claimed he was driving around looking for her, but no one saw him. No surveillance cameras caught his truck. For the town of Millhaven, Claire's disappearance was a gut punch. Parents of her students wept during Sunday service at church. Volunteers returned day after day to search frozen ditches and wooded trails. Her family pleaded for information on local news. Her father, Richard Matthews, stood before cameras, his voice breaking. "If anyone knows where my daughter is, please, please bring her home." By January 15th, fear spread like a shadow. Women stopped jogging alone. Doors that were once left unlocked stayed bolted. People looked over their shoulders in grocery store parking lots. Something had happened to Claire Matthews, and everyone wanted answers. On January 16th, detectives received their first break. A security camera outside Millhaven Gas and Go captured a silver Toyota Corolla Claire S car pulling into the lot at 5:47 p.m. Friday night. The driver, a woman resembling Claire, she went inside, bought a bottle of water, and left. But here's the problem. The footage was blurry. The woman's face was obscured by a hood. Detectives couldn't confirm if it was Claire. Daniel swore it was her. "That's her car. That's her." But Megan, Claire's best friend, studied the tape and shook her head. "I don't think that's her. She doesn't move like Claire. That's not how she walks." The lead left investigators torn. Was this evidence Claire was alive after all, or was it a diversion? On January 17th, 4 days after her disappearance, police found Claire's car. It was abandoned at Millhaven Park near the frozen river. The driver's side door was locked. Her phone was inside the glove compartment. Her purse sat neatly on the passenger seat. But there were no footprints in the snow leading away from the car. The scene looked staged. Detectives began to suspect foul play. While police chased leads, tensions boiled within Claire's family. Her parents were desperate, pushing for wider searches. Her brothers posted angry messages on Facebook, demanding answers, and Daniel withdrew. At a candlelight vigil, he stood in the back, hands in his pockets, head down. Reporters asked him to speak. He declined. To Claire's family, it looked like guilt. To police, it looked like motive. On January 19th, 6 days after Claire vanished, the case took a darker turn. Detectives received an anonymous call. A male voice, disguised, said only one thing: "Check the old slaughterhouse." Then the line went dead. The slaughterhouse had been closed for nearly 20 years. Teenagers used it as a dare spot. Homeless drifters sometimes took shelter there. But in the dead of winter, it sat empty. On January 20th, police entered the building. The floors creaked under their boots. Dust clung to every surface. They moved through hallways with flashlights. And then, in the basement, they saw the steel door of the meat locker. It was closed. When they opened it, the air that spilled out was like stepping into death itself. Inside was Claire, frozen, her eyes half shut, her skin pale and bluish, her hands curled into fists against her chest. The search was over, but the nightmare was only beginning. The body was frozen, but the truth was not the old slaughterhouse on Millhaven's east side had been abandoned since the late 1990s. But when detectives stepped inside that meat locker, it became the scene of one of the most chilling discoveries in Illinois history. Claire's body was frozen stiff against the back wall. She wore black running pants, a green windbreaker, and sneakers. Her lips were blue, her eyelashes frosted. The medical examiner estimated she had been dead for nearly a week, the same length of time she had been missing. But one detail stood out: her fingernails. There were traces of skin embedded beneath them. The autopsy revealed Claire had not died instantly. There were no signs of blunt force trauma, no stab wounds, no gunshot wounds. Instead, her cause of death was hypothermia. Claire Matthews had been locked in that meat locker alive. The coroner concluded she may have survived for several hours in the freezing dark, her body slowly shutting down, her heart slowing, her brain starved of warmth. It was a cruel death, a death of isolation. But the killer had made a mistake. DNA found beneath Claire's fingernails suggested she had fought back. Police immediately looked at the most obvious suspect, her husband, Daniel Reed. From the beginning, Daniel's story had been shaky. He said Claire went for a run, but no one had seen her on the route. No footprints had been found, and her car appeared staged at the park. Detectives interrogated him for hours. Detective, did you have anything to do with your wife's disappearance? Daniel, no, I loved Claire. I'd never hurt her, but Daniel's behavior raised eyebrows. He didn't shed a tear when shown photos of the crime scene. He grew defensive when asked about his marriage. He failed a polygraph test when asked if he killed his wife, and then came the financial angle. Daniel had taken out a $250,000 life insurance policy on Claire just 6 months earlier. The case against him was stacking up, but there was one problem. The DNA under Claire's nails did not match Daniel. Detectives turned their attention elsewhere. The DNA sample was run through CODIS, the National DNA Database. After 3 days, a match came back. It belonged to a man named Ryan Keller. Ryan was 32 years old, a former co-worker of Claire's at Millhaven Elementary. He had worked as a custodian until being fired for inappropriate behavior toward female staff. Claire had once filed a complaint against him. When detectives pulled his file, they saw his address, less than 2 miles from the old slaughterhouse. The pieces began to fit. On January 24th, police brought Ryan Keller in for questioning. At first, he denied everything. I haven't seen Claire in months. I don't even know where she lives. But when detectives confronted him with the DNA evidence, his face went pale. Ryan admitted he had seen Claire recently. According to him, they had bumped into each other at a grocery store a week before her disappearance. He claimed they talked briefly and nothing more, but detectives didn't buy it. Ryan had scratches on his arms, partially healed. He claimed they were from his dog. And when asked about his whereabouts on January 13th, his alibi fell apart. He said he was home watching TV, but no one could confirm it. Detectives obtained a warrant to search Ryan Keller's home. In his basement, they found something chilling. A collection of women's item scarves, earrings, hairbrushes. None belonged to Claire. But in the corner, behind a stack of boxes, they found a set of old keys. One of them fit the padlock on the slaughterhouse's side entrance. Ryan was arrested on charges of kidnapping and murder. When news broke of Ryan Keller's arrest, Millhaven erupted with shock and rage. Parents remembered seeing him in the school hallways, fixing lockers, sweeping floors. They wondered how close he had come to their children. Claire's family called him a monster, but Daniel Reed, Claire's husband, didn't seem relieved. In fact, his reaction raised new questions. At the press conference announcing Keller's arrest, Daniel refused to attend. He told reporters, "They've got the wrong guy. Why would a grieving husband say that?" Unless he knew something the rest of the town didn't. While prosecutors prepared their case against Ryan Keller, forensic testing continued. One discovery stunned investigators. The security footage from the gas station. The blurry woman in the hood driving Claire's car was analyzed frame by FBI specialists. The height, posture, and stride didn't match Claire. It matched a man, someone taller, someone who appeared to be wearing a wig, someone driving Claire's car to stage her disappearance. And when enhanced, the footage revealed part of a tattoo on the driver's hand, a tattoo identical to one Daniel Reed had. The DNA said Ryan Keller was involved, but the video pointed back to Daniel Reed. Had the two men been working together? Or was there something darker at play? Detectives brought Daniel back in. This time, they didn't hold back. They laid out the evidence, the life insurance policy, his inconsistent alibi, the gas station footage, and Ryan Keller's DNA. Daniel broke his silence, but his explanation was something no one expected. He claimed Keller had been stalking Claire for months, that Claire had told him about it, but he didn't believe her at first. Then, when she disappeared, Daniel panicked. He admitted he drove her car to the park to protect her reputation. He said he didn't want the town thinking she'd run off with Keller, but police weren't convinced. Was Daniel covering for himself? Or was he covering for someone else? And then came the breakthrough. Forensics revealed that there were 2 sets of fingerprints on the inside of the meat locker door. Ryan Keller's and Daniel Reed's, 2 men, 2 suspects. Ryan Keller, the disgraced school custodian whose DNA was found under Claire's nails, and Daniel Reed, the grieving husband with a shaky alibi and fingerprints inside the slaughterhouse where Claire froze to death. For the town of Millhaven, the story no longer felt simple. It wasn't just about who killed Claire. It was about how to mend one who should have protected her. One who should never have been near her ended up at the center of her nightmare. The district attorney faced a problem. The evidence tied both men to the crime scene. But the law demanded clarity. Who locked Claire in that freezer? Who planned it? Who carried it out? To solve the puzzle, investigators dug deeper. They subpoenaed phone records, bank transactions, and security footage. They reconstructed Claire's final day minute by minute, and what they uncovered stunned even seasoned detectives. A forensic accountant discovered a bank transfer from Daniel Reed to Ryan Keller. $3,000. The transfer occurred 2 weeks before Claire disappeared. Detectives now believed the unthinkable. Daniel had paid Ryan, but paid him for what? When confronted with the payment, Ryan Keller broke. In a taped interview, he confessed. Daniel Reed had approached him in late December. He offered him money to scare Claire, to teach her a lesson for threatening to leave him. Ryan claimed he never meant for her to die. He said Daniel instructed him to take Claire to the slaughterhouse, lock her in the freezer for a few hours, and then let her out, but something went wrong. Ryan insisted Daniel returned later that night, and that Daniel was the one who never opened the door. If Ryan was telling the truth, Daniel Reed hadn't just wanted to scare his wife, he wanted her gone. In October 2017, 9 months after Claire's frozen body was found, the trial of Daniel Reed began. The courtroom was packed everyday family, reporters, townspeople who had known Claire since she was a child. The prosecution painted a chilling picture. A jealous, controlling husband, a marriage unraveling. A man desperate to maintain control, who conspired with a vulnerable acquaintance to eliminate the woman who no longer fit his idea of a perfect life. They showed the jury photos of Claire, her body frozen, her face peaceful but twisted with the agony of her final moments. They played Ryan Keller's taped confession, and they revealed the fingerprints, Daniel's fingerprints, on the inside of the meat locker door. Daniel's defense team fought back. They argued Ryan Keller was lying to save himself, that Ryan had lured Claire, assaulted her, and killed her on his own. They pointed to Ryan's history, his firing from the school, his disciplinary issues, his obsession with female staff, and they argued the bank transfer was unrelated. Alone, Daniel claimed Ryan was struggling financially. I helped him out, but the jury struggled with one detail Daniel could never explain away. Why were his fingerprints inside the freezer? Claire's family gave emotional testimony. Her mother, Susan, told the jury how Claire had confided in her weeks before she vanished. How she had said, "Mom, I'm not sure I can do this marriage anymore." Her father broke down when describing the moment he learned his daughter had been found. His voice cracked as he said, "She froze to death, alone." And the man who vowed to love her let it happen. Even Megan, Claire's best friend, testified, She told the court about the arguments, the way Daniel hovered, the way Claire brushed off concerns. The jury listened in silence. Some jurors wiped tears. On November 10, 2017, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Daniel Reed was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and aggravated unlawful restraint. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ryan Keller, who had agreed to testify against Daniel, received a plea deal. He was sentenced to 25 years for kidnapping and manslaughter. The trial ended. The verdict was read, but the pain remained. For Millhaven, the loss of Claire Matthews was more than a crime story. It was a wound. Her students left drawings and letters at her gravesite. "I miss you, Miss Matthews. Thank you for teaching me to read." Her parents struggled to forgive. Her brother spoke out against domestic violence at schools and community centers. And the town of Millhaven locked its doors a little tighter, trusted a little less. Because if someone like Claire Matthews wasn't safe, who was? Claire Matthews wanted to teach children. She wanted to build a family. She wanted a simple life filled with books, laughter, and Sunday dinners. Instead, her life ended in a frozen room at the hands of the man she trusted most. Her story is a reminder that evil does not always come from strangers in the dark. Sometimes it comes from the people closest to us. But though her body was frozen, her truth was not. The evidence spoke, the town spoke, the jury spoke. And justice, though imperfect, spoke too. The story of Claire Matthews is more than a tragic crime. It's a warning, a reminder of how fragile trust can be and how dangerous silence becomes when fear overshadows truth. Claire's life teaches us to listen when someone says they feel unsafe, to take red flags seriously, to never dismiss control, jealousy, or manipulation as protectiveness, because behind closed doors, what looks like love can sometimes turn deadly. Here on Crime Scene Chronicles, we tell these stories not only to remember the victims, but to learn from them, to open our eyes, to ask the hard questions, and to make sure silence never protects the guilty. If this story moved you, help us keep telling them. Like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss the next case. This has been Crime Scene Chronicles. And remember, the body was frozen, but the truth was not.